Serbian Krajina 1578–1880. According to the peace treaty between Venice and the Ottoman Empire in 1573, Venice had to cede Cyprus to the Ottoman Empire. As compensation, the Ottoman Empire gave 50 villages around Zadar and 30 villages around Šibenik to Venice. All these villages were Serbian inhabited. From that time, peace was established between these two powers, and their mutual trade exchange became extensive. As soon as the war danger passed, the attitude of the Venetian authorities towards the Serbs in Dalmatia changed significantly. The Catholic Church developed extensive proselytizing activities with the support of the Venetian authorities. Venice almost regularly practiced the policy of give and take, and allow and forbid. Before and during wars, it granted greater rights and privileges to the Serbs, only to take them away immediately after the end of the war. From 1547, the attitude of the Venetian authorities towards their Orthodox subjects changed. Religious violence against them was abolished, but they still remained deprived of their religious rights. Pope Pius IV issued an order on February 16, 1564, stating that from that day on, all Orthodox who were within the Latin dioceses must submit to the authority of the Latin bishops and be subject to them as their superiors and spiritual shepherds. The Venetian government did not enforce this papal order, but neither did it prevent it, instead actively supporting Catholic proselytism. On the territory under Austrian rule at that time, Serbs were treated much better. Recognizing that Serbs played a defensive role for Hungary against the Turks and seeing their role in defending Venetian possessions in Dalmatia, as well as the exploits of the Uskoks at sea, the Austrian court decided to establish the Serbian Krajina, Serbian military frontier, in its border regions towards the Ottoman Empire. This decision was mainly carried out by Archduke Karl, who realized that there was not enough strength in Croatia to defend it and that its defense had to be entrusted to the Serbs. Thus, in 1578, the Serbian military frontier was established with a precisely defined territory and partially autonomous administration. The Serbian military frontier marked the beginning of a Serbian territorial unit under Austria, which the Serbs had sought and for which the Uskoks had fought so determinedly. The Austrian court correctly understood the Serbian aspirations and knew that by granting them a certain territory and some autonomy, they would bind the Serbs to Austria. It was not difficult to predict that the appearance of a somewhat self-governing Serbian territory under Austria would attract Serbs from the lands under Turkish rule. The Catholic Church was strongly opposed to granting real autonomy to the Serbs. Since it was a military state with a specific purpose, the Austrian court sought to keep it firmly under its control. The administrative and command center of the frontier was the city of Karlovac, which was named after Archduke Karl, the founder of the Serbian military frontier. During Karl's lifetime, the Serbian military frontier was, by all its characteristics, a semi-autonomous Serbian state with a military structure. Austria sought to attract as many Serbs as possible to the frontier and to keep them loyal to the emperor, so they were granted significant privileges aimed at maintaining their military life and combat morale. For the same reasons, Austria protected the Uskoks, relying on them to suppress the Venetians in Dalmatia. Jovan Deretic, one of the brave Uskok leaders, was given the title of Grand Duke by Emperor Rudolf II. Venice was in an open and constant conflict with the Uskoks. Besides the damage suffered from them at sea, the Uskoks disrupted Venice's peace with the Turks and openly supported the Austrian emperor. The Venetian war navy blockaded the Uskok passage in the Morlik Channel but failed to destroy it. Duke Deretic launched an attack on the Turks in Klis in 1582 but could not conquer the fortress. During this incident, the Venetians sided with the Turks. A new Uskok attack on Klis followed on April 8, 1596. The organizer of the attack was an Italian named Giovanni Alberti from Split, who did not respect Venice's policies. For this attack, the Austrian emperor sent weapons and ammunition to the Uskoks. The attack succeeded, and the entire Turkish garrison in the fortress was destroyed. Over the liberated Klis, the Uskoks raised the flag of the Austrian emperor. The Venetians feared that the Serbs, with the help of Austria, would drive them out of Dalmatia, so they joined the Turks in fighting against the Serbs. With the help of the Venetians, the Turks recaptured Klis, but only after 2 months of heavy fighting. The Uskoks had to retreat, and the Turks then carried out reprisals against the Serbs in the vicinity of Klis and other places. Due to these Turkish reprisals, many Serbs moved from Dalmatia to the Serbian military frontier. where Emperor Rudolf warmly welcomed them and granted them land in Gomirja, Vrbovsko, and Moravis. They built the Gomirja Monastery in 1602. There were also Serbs in Istria, and a Serbian Orthodox community existed in Pula in 1580. The existence of the Serbian military frontier seriously concerned the Turks, especially because the Serbian resistance in Turkey did not weaken. The Turks sought something that could discourage the Serbian fighting morale. In that regard, Sinan Pasha brought the relics of Saint Sava from Mileseva and burned them on Vracar on February 27, 1594. However, this act of burning the relics of Saint Sava had the opposite effect of what the Turks expected. The Serbs, led by the then Patriarch Jovan, 1592-1614, viewed the Turks even more unfavorably, considering them godless. Upon hearing rumors that Emperor Rudolf was preparing for war against the Turks, Patriarch Jovan took the lead in the movement of Serbs in Helm, a region, and convened a council in Kuchimi under his presidency. Representatives from Bosnia, Macedonia, Butarska, Serbia, Savina, Herzegovina, Albania, and Dalmatia were present. During this council, a plan was made for a general Serbian uprising against the Turks. If the Croats had been capable of defending their land, Vienna would never have allowed the creation of the Serbian military frontier, exclusively composed of Orthodox Serbs. The Croatian historian Smisiclas says, "It is truly shameful that the enemy could pass so easily through our land as if no one was there." The military frontier was settled almost exclusively by Serbs, equally in all regions, in Croatia, Slavonia, Dalmatia, and Vojvodina. It should be noted that in the same year when the Croats joined the Habsburgs in 1527, Emperor Ferdinand entrusted the defense of Croatia to the Serbs, who were to fight under the leadership of the Croatian Ban. From 1531, a significant Serbian community took over the defense of Croatia without the Croatian Ban, and Vienna constantly strengthened this Serbian community to prevent the Ottoman penetration around Zumburak. In the year 1538, the Austrian emperor granted the first privileges to these brave defenders. These Serbs were given the right to own land as free peasants and were exempted from paying taxes or tithes to the Croatian bishops for a period of 20 years. The 17th century was a time of religious intolerance. At the beginning of this century, the Turks committed great violence and atrocities against the Serbs to force them to convert to Islam. On the other hand, the papal legate, the Jesuit Bertol Kasich, arrived in southern Hungary in 1612 with the intention of converting the Serbs. Emperor Rudolf II, under the influence of the Jesuits, sought to eradicate orthodoxy from his state. The religious war lasted in Europe from 1618 to 1648. Emperor Ferdinand II had entrusted the Jesuits with the administration of state affairs. He stated that he prefers to rule over a desert than over heretical subjects. His intention was to impose Catholicism on the whole of Europe. He initiated the 30 Years' War in 1618 by attacking the Czech king Frederick V. The war ended with the defeat of the Czechs in the Battle of White Mountain on September 8, 1620. One of the consequences of the religious war was that the Protestant population in Germany decreased from 12 to 4 million, and the population of Bohemia decreased from 4 million to 800,000 souls. In such circumstances, only the great Turkish threat saved the Serbs in the lands under the rule of Austria and Venice. In February 1626, the papal nuncio Carlo Carafa delivered a papal order to Emperor Ferdinand II, commanding the expulsion of all Serbian Orthodox priests from Croatia and Slavonia. Since then, Serbs had to perform their religious rituals only at night and in secrecy. The forced conversion of Serbs was carried out with the help of the military, taking the form of real military operations. Monk Janko from Zumburak refused to change his faith and was thrown into prison, tortured, and died in agony. Metropolitan Hefimij of Koster, who had come from Constantinople, disappeared without a trace, and 14 monks were sentenced to galleys, where all of them died from torture. During that time, a large number of prominent Serbs were unjustly killed without trial. In Dalmatia, the relationship between Serbs and Venetians changed, as the Venetians wanted to expand their possessions at the expense of the Turks through the Serbs. The cooperation between Serbs and Venetians began in an organized manner after the report of the Venetian administrator Zeno on April 25, 1635, in which he described the situation among the Serbs in Dalmatia. Zeno reported that the Serbs were ready for armed struggle against the Turks and that several tens of thousands of good soldiers could be mobilized among them, willing to come under Venetian rule. The Venetians had already been secretly working on cooperation with the Serbs in the part of Dalmatia under Turkish rule. When the Turks attacked the island of Crete in 1645, they also launched an attack with a large army on Venetian possessions in Dalmatia, where they encountered strong resistance from the well-prepared and well-organized Serbs. At that time, in Dalmatia, there were several Venetian military commanders who were very skilled and experienced. First and foremost, we must mention Leonardo Foscolo, who held the position of Dalmatia's administrator, and his chief of staff, Marco Passaro. The Venetian forces in the Dalmatian theater were almost exclusively composed of Serbs. During that period, Serbs were led by great heroes and capable leaders such as Petar and Filip Smiljanec, Janko Mitrović, and his son Stojan. In 1648, with 6,000 infantry and 700 cavalry, Serbs liberated Durrës, Nin, and Virlica from the Turks. The following year, they also liberated Klis. The Serbian army, led by Smiljanec, achieved victory after victory. These glorious triumphs of Serbian arms gave great hope to the Serbs, and they began preparing plans for liberating all Serbian lands from the Turks. While Foscolo was engaged in warfare in the Bay of Kotor, with the help of Perast and Pastrovici in 1649, the Turks launched a counterattack toward Zadar with large forces. Ilija Smiljanec defeated them in Karen and Zvonigrad and drove them out. In these battles, the names of Smiljanec, Vuk Manduzic, Duke Todor, Mitrović, and Kraljevic were adorned with fame. Later, Smiljanec and Mitrović declared war against Turkey in 1651 in the name of the Serbian liberation movement and in their personal names. The Serbs pursued the Turkish army all the way to the Una River and approached Bihać. During this campaign, they defeated the Turks in several battles. Unfortunately, in one of these battles, the brave Smiljanec fell in 1654. The Serbs then withdrew back to Dalmatia. 2 years later, the Turks attacked Dalmatia again and besieged Split. The Venetian administrator of Dalmatia, Antonio Bernardo, called for the help of the Serbs. Led by Janko Mitrović and Ilija Milković, the Serbs defeated the Turks near Split and pursued them all the way to Sarajevo. A certain Serb, known only as Morlik, took command of the Venetian navy in the Bay of Kotor. The Venetian administrator of Dalmatia, Andrea Corner, stated before the Venetian Senate in 1680 that the Venetian infantry was not capable of fighting against the Turks, and therefore, the defense of Venetian provinces should be entrusted to the Serbs. Neither Venice nor Austria wanted to support the Serbian liberation movement nor the liberation of Serbian lands from the Turks. Both of them sought to exploit the Serbian struggle for their selfish interests, sometimes in an unworthy and corrupt manner. In August 1684, the Austrian army, led by Prince Montecuccoli, defeated the Turks on the river Raba. However, this victory was not utilized as the emperor concluded peace with the Turks the same year. In Austria, there was a raging religious hatred against Orthodoxy. The Orthodox bishop Gavril Mijakic was forcibly replaced, and in his place, the Unionist Pavle Zorčić was appointed in 1687. When the conspiracy of Princes Zrinski and Frankopan was discovered in 1670, Bishop Mijakic was accused of complicity, imprisoned, and died in prison in 1686. By the peace treaty between Venice and Turkey in 1669, the fortresses in Dalmatia, which the Serbs had liberated, Klis, Nin, Zemunik, Vrana, Ostrovica, and Durrës were returned to the Turks. The Serbs rightfully felt betrayed both by Venice and Austria in this war. In a new war between Austria and Turkey, the Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa besieged Vienna in 1683. He was defeated there, and upon hearing of this defeat, the Serbs from Dalmatia started fighting against the Turks, although Venice was not yet at war with them. In 1683 alone, the Serbs liberated Obrovac, Plavno, Ostrovica, Benkovac, Durrës, and Scradin. At the beginning of 1684, Zadvarja was liberated. Venice entered the war against the Turks only in 1685 to capitalize on Serbian victories. At that time, its administrator Valier attacked Sinj with the Venetian army. However, the Turks defeated him and forced him to flee. Then Stojan Janković arrived with his army, captured Sinj, and entered Herzegovina. In the battle on the river Trebizond, Janković defeated the Turks in 1688. The Bosnian Pasha sent 16,000 soldiers to Herzegovina, but Jankovic also defeated this Turkish army and forced them to flee. Another Turkish attack was repelled, and Jankovic continued the liberation of Herzegovina. Trebinje and the fortress of Klobuc above Lastva Trebinska were liberated in 1689. In the same year, Nin was liberated in Dalmatia, and the Serbian army advanced through Bosnia. The names of Prince Jankovic and Serdar Smiljanic were celebrated everywhere. Austria, in a few years, liberated Hungary and then Slavonia from the defeated Turkish army near Vienna. The Serbian army in Herzegovina, with the help of Hiduks, constantly made progress. However, Austria and Venice signed a peace treaty with Turkey behind the backs of the Serbs and to the detriment of the Serbs. Therefore, the Serbian army had to withdraw from Herzegovina. As the Serbs from Turkey supported Austria in this war, the Turks sought revenge and committed terrible violence against the Serbs.